Hi. Hello. Hi, afternoon everyone. I'm Gavin from Little Forest. We do digital governance. So we're based here in London, small software team. I'd like to talk today about how governance, which can be your friend, can help you sort of in these fast-changing times. So often people look at governance as like an authority figure and kind of from a police perspective, and yeah, it is that. But basically, governance you could look at, in terms of, we talked a lot about content management today. Content governance is like above and below management. So there are lots of reports that we create that help you from looking down onto your content and also looking from the fine grain up, and so you can understand exactly what's going on. But first I'd like to just quickly look at a lot of the challenges we've discussed around what universities have. So a lot of these, everyone's got thousands of websites, is what we see. Unbelievably, because I'm mainly from more of a corporate sector originally, and multinationals and so on, it's incredible to say that you've got hundreds of CMSs in a single university. And I find that absolutely fascinating. So the other challenges that we see are, because of that plethora of assets, you have very unclear ownership. And that is possibly the largest issue in digital governance for universities. And it's a challenge that I think is going to be addressed over the next couple of years by all of you. Also, basically, of course, with such a large estate, to stay compliant, not only to the regulations, but also to your own brand guidelines is very key and very difficult. And all of that, all the fragmentation, then causes your customers and your prospective customers to struggle to interact with your university. So everyone thinks of governance as a headache. That's just the way we look at it. It's like, okay, this big pain, and we need to start thinking about actually being governance fit, and that it's a much simpler thing, and that it can be your friend. So I think we need to create a habit of governance in our organizations. Many of us are a long way down this path. I'd like to just drop a little couple of tips today about what we see working in terms of creating this habit. So a habit is basically a behavior that is done with little or no conscious thought. So how do we create that? Firstly, I just want to look at and make sure we're on the same page about what governance is. So we see that there are 5 pillars, the most important one being people. And it's often the most overlooked part of governance, especially governance as a service, so software. People is the key that holds everything else together. The other key areas, and most people think about quality in any business, not just digital. In digital, it's things like broken links, spelling mistakes, and things like large images, broken images, and so on. Performance, as we were discussing in the last talk, and performance is at least 2 areas. So you've got your business area, which is how many students have I got signing up through my website, and you've also got, say, the technical performance. So performance is a key area of governance, and then security. Without having a basis of security across our entire digital estate, we really don't have governance. So security is absolutely essential. Responsibility is also one of the most interesting areas. So responsibility for a university and for all organizations is really things like accessibility, it's inclusivity, it's making sure that our customers are treated with the right privacy. So those are the pillars, and then if you think of governance like a big triangle, at the very top is your entire brand. So you need to look after all of it, and then all the way down, and you've got, so under your brand and your university, you then have like a faculty. Under your faculty, you have a school. Under your school, you have most key journeys that customer will take. Maybe they're going to register, they're going to sign up, they're going to come to an open day. And then beyond that, just a set of pages, you need to govern a single page, and you need to govern even a section of a page and interactions with the page, and also then any asset that is making up that page, like a large image or a broken image. So think of governance in terms of those 7 layers. And I wanted to talk about also what are the benefits of doing this across your entire estate. You mentioned brand image. This is possibly the key driver at the moment, I think. Making sure that your information is accurate, so that prospective learning about the course or the organization is going to get the right information and improve their experience. So I want to do a case study. We have great fortune to be working with the University of Edinburgh for the last few months and helping them with a digital estate audit. So Edinburgh, as you know, amazing university, very prestigious, very large digital estate. And what we did together with them was a vertical and a horizontal domain discovery. So what that means is we found every subdomain and every other domain that they own, so every site across what they had. And also we then took this massive inventory and started going through the university to find an owner per site. 14,000 websites were found. That is a combination of internal plus external auditing. And those have then now been grouped into their 8 business areas. Many of the sites have been closed down, decommissioned in different ways. But the amazing news is that now they have a proper central registry of 1,497 sites. Each of them, every single one, has an owner. So that's the fun bit. It kind of looks like this. You can filter by CMSs. As I say, they have hundreds, like everyone here. You can look at the different school or the person who owns that site. Many people will own 7, 8, 12 sites. And this is then the registry to keep up to date and is owned.
1 minute.
Sure. 1 minute left. Okay. Basically, you can also then dive into any of the schools and have a look at the full report. Brilliant. In terms of content auditing and governance being your friend, this is a great thing to get out of governance. So by auditing a typical content audit, you'll say, okay, we've got all these pages on our website. This page is relevant to this kind of customer. It's also going to be edited by this kind of person. Maybe we're going to revise it in this point in time. So if you're needing to do a content audit, then content governance is a great tool to start with. And just on this, in terms of content life cycles, everyone out there, every organization, the web's 20 odd years old, we've all got what we call a content graveyard. I don't know who created that term, but I love it. So governance will help you to start to control that graveyard and start to go through the process of planning, executing, measuring, and then eventually retiring and so on, your content. Thanks very much.
So one of the things I wanted to actually talk about is, as times are changing, how that kind of approaches, well, what's the help that's kind of available to us externally? Really quickly, I'm Dan from Site Improve. I work in our professional services team. And Site Improve, for those of you guys who may not be familiar, we're a content optimization platform that actually looks at content from the ground up, having a view on technical, having a view on accessibility and user experience, having a view on how you're amplifying that content through channels like search and SEO. So today I just want to talk a little bit about what we're seeing, or how you may want us to rather start thinking about approaching agencies or external help with a specific focus on search engine optimization. So the first thing that's actually was really interesting for me, I didn't realize there are so many agencies that kind of specialize in digital in the UK. Not all of them are in London, by the way, so don't be concerned. So there's over 25,000 digital agencies specializing in lots and lots of different things that are actually available in the UK. So I think if I were actually to start thinking about going to market as either a brand or someone in higher education, there's tons of choice, right? And within that tons of choice, there's also tons of specialization. So people that have agencies that have started in an area of discipline 1, so let's say agencies that have actually been doing content production, just building content in-house for long periods of time, and now they've grown into doing social and display and paid search and organic search. So there's lots of different types of organizations that you can actually partner with. So again, making it also a little bit challenging, right? And when you start thinking about, how agencies that can help you specifically with SEO, these agencies can also come in different flavors. So there's agencies that, again, just do SEO. I think increasingly, as my last slide illustrated, that's becoming less and less the case. more often you're going to see integrated agencies that specialize in organic search, but then basically part of their presentation back to you would be, we can do more with your data. We can actually help you in terms of your paid search. We can help you with your affiliate marketing. We can help you with your social. So I think increasingly the trend that we're seeing is when, even though, again, in this example, you may be looking for agencies that can actually help with organic search optimization, these agencies are actually going to want to do more for you. All right. Now, what can, I know this is from the A-team, if anyone can remember or know what that is. Why would you want to not only go to an agency, but what can they do for you? And it's a very, very broad question. I think first and foremost, for me, agencies can help you understand how search engines are indexing your content today. They're going to give you a really broad view on not only the why, but also the how, right? So how are people engaging with your content, for what page, for what keywords, again, over what period of time. They can actually sort of demystify that organic universe of Google or Bing or whatever search engine we're talking about, and they do a pretty good job of that. They can do content optimization as well, so whether that's copy or meta tags, they can do a pretty good job of saying, here's what you've got today, even if you do have lots and lots and lots of different sites. And they can say, here are what you can do on page and off page as well, right? So thinking about maybe your backlinks, right? They can do a pretty good job of understanding what you may want to do to improve. I think the big thing for me is when you're getting deliverables like this, they can help you make sense of the data. So yes, they can give you a really nice and pretty report top down that says, look, here's the 1,001 technical things that you may want to adjust. But in that ideal world, you're also getting this kind of cross-consulting mix where they're going to sit down with you and actually explain what all of that means, right? So they're not just going to give you a report, they're going to help you make sense of the data, and I think that's pretty valuable. So what are some of the challenges? I have been actually working, and still do kind of in Site Improve, working with both agencies and brands, right? So agencies and distinct entities, and I think you have these two very distinct sides of the coin. I think you have agencies that actually say, well, my customers aren't giving me enough to work with, right? My customers either have internal organizational issues, or they're not setting the right expectations with us, or again, the goalposts keep moving, and from a customer point of view, the ROI isn't always clear either, right? So they're saying, have I really gotten something from the agency? Or maybe it feels like my agency's, there's a lot of movement going on. What have I actually gotten out of this, right? So management of that relationship is key. And so that's why I think we want to be really clear, if we were to procure an agency, and again, this is for search or anything really, why we'd want to do that. I think three of the main value propositions for me is, again, if you're looking at taking on search, and especially as a new discipline, you can scale up very, very quickly. So rather than either going to market for, again, one person, 4 people, 5 people, even if that person's been in the job for many, many years, it can take you from, not 0 to 100, but let's say from 0 to 50 in a smaller period of time, as long as you have a really good scope of work with the agency, allowing you to then do what basically your teams do best, which is focusing on your business and your areas of specialization. The other thing is, if we don't know where to start, agencies can actually provide you with a strategic roadmap. So they can say, here's what we would do in this order, and here's what we want to get out of it over this period of time. So we can also approach agencies not only for dedicated pieces of work, but we can actually, again, if we're talking about SEO, we can actually ask them, what does that look like in terms of long-term strategy? So what are some of the considerations as we actually, maybe start thinking, should I really endeavor to look at search in-house, or do I want to go external? I think one, knowledge and expertise. Again, a lot of times when you're working with an agency, you're tapping into 4 or 5 or X number of people that have worked on lots and lots of different organizational scenarios. So you're tapping into this pretty big knowledge base of people that can actually look at a scenario and say, I've seen that before. And they can speak from experience. Whereas, especially if you're hiring someone that's new, they might have had experience, but with only the organizations they have worked with, right? So a much more linear experience set. From a cost perspective, I think there is something to say there about just headcount, anything that comes with people that are staying in that job over a certain period of time, and wanting to continue that. So if you are investing in a person to manage SEO for you, you're going to have to continue that and help that person grow as well. There's a cost side of that. Finally, technology, and this is kind of interesting as well because you're actually benefiting from an agency and all the tech that they have in-house and them being familiar to use it. So final takeaways, I think for me, have really clear expectations, treating the agency as an extended part of your team, being very clear with them, having a really good relationship, and making sure there's very good and clear lines of work. And I've heard the bell, so that's it.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Shell Eldor-Evans from Manifesto. We are a digital agency. We do all of the things that you just said. But I'm going to talk to you today about a thing that I think you can all take home and a method that I think is crucial to the success of any of the projects that we work on. I want to share with you a method that you could get on with next week that's going to contribute directly to the success of the projects that you work on in the future. I work within our innovation hub, we call it, called Future Foundry. Now, in Future Foundry, we are tasked with going into organizations to identify the opportunities that sit before them, and then to come up with a number of ways that we can capitalize on those opportunities so as to drive some change. Now, when I'm describing change here, I'm referring to changing the products that we already have to optimize them for the future. I'm talking about delivering new products that might not be already in your ecosystem. I'm talking about delivering new services that we haven't delivered before, or I'm talking about making some changes to the ways that we already do things. All of that I refer to as change. So when thinking about how we help institutions to do that within Manifesto's Future Foundry, we take a very sort of informed and structured approach to how we tackle it. And that approach that I'm going to take you through today is called problem framing. Now, we work really hard on when we first get to know an organization to do two things. Firstly, we want to frame their problems really, really clearly. And secondly, we want to prove or disprove some potential solutions to those problems before any investment is made into commissioning the project that delivers the change. So during the problem framing exercise that we run, and this is an exercise that you can run in your own organizations, we work really hard to figure out if what we're all talking about is actually a problem, because sometimes we can get lost in debate and we're not able to anchor it into a specific thing for a specific audience member. I'll go into a bit more detail about that in a second. The second thing we're asking ourselves is this actually a problem that's worth solving right now? And if it is, what method are we going to apply to try and solve it? So the second thing that we're doing, once we've been through the process of problem framing, is to test and prototype some potential solutions. And there's a couple of methods that we use that I'll describe to you in a second. What we're asking ourselves during this phase is, what might a solution look like? We're asking ourselves, is the solution viable for us as an organization, as an institution? And crucially, we're asking ourselves, is it desirable for those people we serve, our customers? So when we're undertaking this process of validation and prototyping, we're looking at two types of change. We're looking at kind of identifying potential small incremental changes, so say optimizations to the pages that we already have, to the journeys that we already offer to our audiences, and then some big sort of radical changes. So at that end of the scale might be knock it down and build it again, an end of type of work. We're interested in both because a large number of smaller incremental changes, when added up, can actually deliver the same amount of value as something at the more radical end of that scale. I've got a beautiful slide that you could have seen to illustrate that point, but just imagine it. Now, for me, the elixir at the centre of all of this that enables us to do it well is an exercise called problem framing. And what we achieve by going through that is creating a backlog, a long list of problems or opportunities, if you're an optimist, that the organisation faces. We can put them in an order, and we can start picking them off after some value assessment based on, well, which problem do we think we should focus on now because it's a problem that we think would deliver most value to solve. The problem framing exercise then leaves us with this long list that we can work with and start testing some solutions to solve those problems. Now, I've got another beautiful slide you can't see, which describes what problem framing is, and I'll describe it for you. We want to create one sentence. It's effectively, if every brief that you ever gave to an agency had started with a problem-framed statement, you would get a better result from the work that you get from us. And I think the same is true for internal teams, because this statement creates a central focus for everybody to work towards. It includes a person. We start with a person who feels something. So we're targeting which audience member is this a problem for. We include, based on some insight that we've gathered, a negative feeling that this audience member has and a reason for why they might be having that negative feeling. We also include in this statement the step that the audience member is trying to take. So it could be as granular as signing up for a prospectus to be posted to your address, or it could be something much bigger, like the registration process itself. And then we also include the obstacle that we think, the hypothesis of the obstacle that we think the audience member is facing. So that is the person, the feeling they are having, the reason that we think they are struggling, and the step that they're trying to take along with some obstacles that they might face along the way. What we do is take one of these really neatly described problem statements and then we put it through an innovation process. And at Future Foundry for us, there are two key methods that we use for that. One of them is a hack day. So we might take the problem statement, get a group of people together in a room for one day and go through a facilitated ideation process that enables us to describe and prototype a number of potential solutions that we can then explore in more detail. The second method that we use with our problem statements, this kind of machine that we're putting it through, is a method that some of you might be familiar with called the Google Design Sprint. 1 minute. So, thank you. So it was first pioneered by Google Ventures and then put into popular culture by Jake Knapp with his excellent book Sprint. In this process, we take a problem statement and in 1 week we define who the audience is, we design what a potential solution might be, we create a prototype, and then on the Friday of that week we test it with some real people so we can gather some insight as to whether we have created the right solution or not. If we have, we move forward and commission the project. If we haven't, we start again because maybe we've described our problem statement incorrectly. Thank you very much.
Hello everyone. Okay, so I'm Jill Stevens. I'm from Click for Assistance. For those of you that haven't heard of us or don't know of us, we provide online communication software for websites, and we're particularly interested in the university arena. We work with around 25% of you now. Today, we're going to focus more on live chat, just because that tends to be a bit of a bigger subject. And we've been around since 2004. For the first few years, we're growing the customer base. Once we had a fairly large range of industries and types of implementation, we start to analyse the data. So we're really looking at what makes a difference when it comes to chat uptake. So we look at button size, button colour, wording, window design, the questions that you ask, and those kinds of things. And we came up with some figures. So we get to just before 2013, we've analysed everything with the experts on the subject now. We know that on average, when you get website visitors, about 2.5% of them will start a chat with you. That kind of eases up to about 3% over the next few years. And we thought categorically we know what's happening. And then we met Southampton University, or Solent University rather, in Southampton. And everything changed. It was incredible. So after their sort of first season of implementation, we realised that they were getting an 8% uptake on their chat button. And this is like 3 times the average. So we were really interested to understand why it works so well for universities, really at that time. So we started looking at, were they doing something different with their implementation? Did they have some kind of magic words on their chat windows that were getting everybody to chat to them? And nothing was really that different, to be fair. So it really came down to the audience that you had and this kind of millennial demographic, if you like, for the age group. So we started looking into that a little bit further. And a company called Savato did a independent survey research across the world. They particularly focused on Australia, France, Germany, Japan, the UK and the US. Now, the average across the world was 69% of millennials said they preferred text-based communication to actually speaking with their voice when they talk to organisations or in their general social life. But the UK actually topped that chart, so our millennials are kind of even more interested in text-based communication than the rest of the world. So we're looking at 74% in the UK. In fact, this is so prevalent now in the UK that some of the media outlets start calling this generation mute, because they just don't use their voices at all. The thing is, I think that technology and development tend to set the scene for what's happening. They set trends, in the 80s. I remember the 80s, and some of you probably don't, but we perhaps have, when synthesizers came out, we had tech pop, and hair mousse, I've got something there. Look, hair mousse. This is what we did with hair mousse. We got hold of it and we went massive. Yeah, absolutely. So I think technology gets introduced and then we go mad with it for a while, and then we settle down and we don't have hair like that anymore. Some of us. So we take it more seriously and we start to develop what really works with it, not that, preferably. So. Technology gets introduced. 92, we get the first text message. It goes from a desktop to a mobile phone. It was actually Merry Christmas. I don't know whether it was Christmas at the time, but that's what they sent. And then in 94, we get the first phone-to-phone text. Now this is all happening before the Generation Z that we're talking about now was even born. So they've grown up with this technology at their fingertips. It's a real digital age for them. And then we go really into the true transition. So by 2010, WhatsApp's the most common messaging app. 2011, 1 billion messages a day going through. By 2018, it's 65 billion messages a day. So they're really not picking up the phone to talk anymore. In fact, I think when they were surveyed, I haven't got this on a slide unfortunately, but if they were asked on their phones what functionality would they lose, all the millennials are saying actually they'd lose the ability to call somebody and on a phone. So they'd just have like text messaging and apps and that kind of thing. So once we can understand what their motivations are, we can start to tailor our approach and really get under the skin of why they're coming to us through these methods and make sure they work really well. So we start to look at various surveys at this point of how these millennials are feeling. And the really interesting part of that is that actually their approach to communication is emotional rather than logical. We all logically know that it's quicker to text. We know that it's more convenient. We know that it's instant. But millennials think about it as from a completely different perspective. They look at the etiquette of their communication. So they're now used to texting somebody before they call. And as a result of that, they feel that they are encroaching on you. They're kind of how can I put this exactly? I'll just where I am. But they're seeing themselves as being put as a priority over your time. So they feel it's almost rude to phone uninvited, which is a really interesting response. Strangely, I heard Stephen Fry once describe the telephone as the rudest invention ever, because it's the equivalent of somebody walking up to your desk and banging on your desk and demanding your attention there and then getting you to put down what you were doing. So they're really adopting this, the millennials, and they're taking that into the way that they communicate with us now on a very emotional level. There's a few other aspects of that. You know, they expend less energy, takes less messages to get the message across. It is more informal. You know, they don't have to put on all the airs and graces on the phone. But more importantly, and particularly during clearing and that kind of thing, is the avoidance of emotion. So they are not only not hearing or not transmitting the emotion in their voices, but they're also protecting themselves from rejection. You know, I can take it if I can see it, but you tell it to me and I don't really like it. So when we start looking at that, we can start to vary our approach with our audience to get the best out of them when we're talking to them. And I'm not trying to pigeonhole anyone. Obviously, these are averages, absolutely. But if we want to... yeah, absolutely. It sounded like one coming through, actually. But yeah, so if we want to communicate with our audience of millennials, we need to offer them the path of least resistance. So it's not only text, it might be phone, but it's definitely an omni-channel approach so that they can choose the channel that they're most comfortable with. Thank you.
Yes, the title of my small talk is Stop Hiring Agencies, because I want to retire, okay? But of course my tongue's slightly in my cheek when I say that. What I mean is stop hiring agencies for some stuff. And I think that there are certain things that we're hired to do and we're asked to be hired to do that we shouldn't be doing. And to be frank, we don't want to do, and I'll come on to that in a bit. But why? So why am I saying this stuff? Sorry, let's get my notes up here. It kind of comes down to getting good value. If you get an agency in to do a piece of work for you, chances are it's going to cost a fair bit, as Brian always refers to us as overcharging consultants or that kind of thing. And if we end up doing a job where the result is kind of like not really what everybody wanted it to be, then everybody ends up feeling a little bit let down, including us, because we want our clients to feel great about what we've done, and then they might recommend us to other people, etc. So everyone feels a little bit let down if we're doing work that we shouldn't be doing. So what exactly shouldn't we be doing? And there's a few points that I'm going to go over here. The first one is things that you should be doing but you don't have time for. And of course, if you're massively understaffed, then that's unavoidable. You're going to have to get outside help in to help you do that, but it doesn't change the fact that it's wrong, or the things that are wrong about that still apply even if you have to do it. So why then? I think one of the things is, if you do hire an agency in, because you haven't got time to do something else, it's always for the sexy job. We end up doing the cool stuff, and you're left doing kind of small sites for professors' latest research project or whatever that nobody's ever going to look at. And that is, it's not great for morale. That's the reason why it's not a good thing for us to be doing that kind of work. And another one is, we might be hired, I say we, I mean agencies in general, we might be hired to do a project that's on a particular technology that we then kind of walk away from, and it's been agreed that we're just going to do this one single piece of work. And then the internal team has to adopt that, and they have to learn the idiosyncrasies of that particular system, whereas if they'd done it in the first place, then they wouldn't have that learning process to go through. And the final point on this is, on this particular point, and I'm repeating what the VC said yesterday, if you outsource, then you're kind of giving stuff away. You're not getting the knowledge firsthand. You're not owning that knowledge, I guess. So the next point is some aspects of user research, because I think a lot of major aspects of user research, agencies are great at helping you with. Stakeholder interviews with senior people, for example, is a really good example of that. But it's the fact that user research should be this kind of ongoing, never-ending process doesn't fit well with hiring an agency for a month or 2 months to do a particular project. And I've got specific examples of that as well. We did some user interviews with preschool or pre-university students, 16 to 18-year-olds, and we kind of therefore had to spend 2 or 3 weeks to kind of book in slots with these people because, you know, it's a finite project for us. And then, of course, half of them don't turn up. So there's that feeling at the end of it of everyone's feeling a little bit let down, as I said when we started off. And it would be much better if you could interview 16 to 18-year-olds continually over a longer period of time. And also we're kind of old and beardy and scary, and 16-year-olds don't like talking to us. I'm getting there. Content audits. I never want to do a content audit ever again. The reason why I'm including this is I don't think it's a particularly good use of agencies to kind of spend weeks going through thousands of pages. But this is a good example of where I do think agencies can help you, doing like a pilot, for example. We could help set up the audit, we could help set up how you're going to measure the different criteria you're going to measure by, and that kind of thing, and then we hand it back in-house and you get on with it. Final point is, and this applies to all businesses, it's not just higher education, other than maybe really specialist stuff, like somebody mentioned drone footage earlier, hiring somebody to do drone footage, that kind of makes sense, but basically do your own content. Don't hire other people to do your content. And I expect you're all nodding your heads and saying, well, yes, we know this. But I got an RFP last year from an HE institution to redesign their website, and part of that was, part of the RFP was basically saying that we had to write all of their copy. So it's still out there, and we shouldn't be doing that. That's a job that agencies shouldn't be doing. So what should we be doing? I suppose I had to finish on that, didn't I? And I think that we can kind of boil that down to we're good at providing advice, we're good at providing specialism, and we're particularly good at disruption. If you want something to change, then getting the third party in to help you do that makes a lot of sense. And that's it.
So, questions. Who wants to ask a question? Rob wants to ask a question. I'm so used to you being the mic controller that I didn't realize you were actually going to answer a question.
I've got a question for Click for Assistance. Do you think that more people were using live chat on university websites because a lot of our content is crap and they can't figure out what they need? Because that's what I thought you were going to say.
Which university are you from? You're from Greenwich?
University of Dundee.
Dundee, right, okay. I can't comment on your website. But I think in general, students have difficulty navigating. There's so much information on these websites. They need help, and the phone's not what they want to do. They don't want to pick that up and talk to you because they're actually in that digital. Oh, thank you. You're moving now. They're actually in that digital environment already. So yes, because they're in that digital environment already, it's good to keep them within that same platform, answer their questions, maintain them through that journey on the website, but assist them with it as well. So while these guys are all sorting out your websites and getting them all, streamlined and your content sorted and everything structured properly, in the meantime, you're helping these visitors, these potential students that are perhaps, they're not world savvy. This is their first exploration into the big wide world outside of school. So they want that additional support. So yeah, live chat's definitely growing across the industry, whichever platform you use, whether it's Click for Assistance or someone else. Does that answer you?
One more question. Is there another question? No, then thank you all and go in peace.